Thank you for tuning in to the fourth episode of the Roar Rundown Sports Podcast. I'm Chris Gay, joined by my co-host Zach Cloud, and we are very happy to bring you another edition of the Roar Rundown Sports Podcast, where we talk about everything and anything relating to Ouachita Tiger athletics. So we're going to start off right away with, if you tuned in to last week's show, we mentioned that as of that recording, OBU Battle of the Ravine volleyball had not played yet because that was on a Tuesday. We recorded on a Monday and released on Wednesday. And it's going to be sort of another situation like that this coming week. But we'll go ahead and talk about that Henderson State game. And that was a great game. It was a loss for OBU, first conference and home game of the season. And I was able to be there. It was a phenomenal game. I was on the call. OBU lost in 5 sets, but they were all hard-fought sets. Henderson did not take a single one easily. You look at some of the stats. Henderson definitely had their hands all over this game. They had 63 kills, 8 blocks. They shot about 26%, 52 assists, 58 digs, and really the only team stat that OBU had that was greater than Henderson's was in service aces. But one player that we kept calling all night, and go check out that game, by the way, on Ouachita Sports Digital Network's YouTube page, was Christiane Udo. She had 23 kills, 25 total points. Oh, man, she was I don't even want to say that she was a headache. She was just a problem for Ouachita all night long. There wasn't anything they could do about her. She's just so powerful. But it wasn't only her. There were a couple other players that had a pretty good impact for Henderson as well.
Yeah, she definitely showed she's got the ability to take over a game. But her teammates really backed her up and were able to make things easier for her. As we saw, Violetta Mendoza Quintana, she had 11 kills. Madison Hatt had 31 assists, which led to a lot of their points.
And this player, I will mention, Jagoda Shabinska. Excuse me, I had to take a second there. She's out of Poland, and we were hoping throughout the night that we had some viewers from Poland. We have some international viewers every once in a while. I don't think we'd ever had one from Poland, so hopefully we had one. But she had the game-winning point, and I believe it was the 5th set, if not the 4th. And she didn't have a huge impact in the first, I believe it was the first 3 sets. But those last 2, she really made her mark. But, Zach, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but go ahead and talk about some of what we saw. Though OBU lost, they still had some high points individually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a great game to watch. Emily Adams, she had 13 kills for us. Haley Fairchild right behind her, 9 kills, nothing new to see. We're used to both of those girls kind of leading us and being our focal points. Riley Brazil with 8 kills, and she also had 10 total points. And we had Courtney Hansen for us. She kind of led to a lot of our points. She had 33 assists. It was really good to see her kind of step into her role, be able to set up her teammates for success. Leah Gardner, she showed she's not afraid to step up to the net, because Christiane Udo, she had 23 kills, but Leah Gardner had 2 blocks. So it was good to see her not really scared of the contact, not really scared to contest and see if she can make a difference. Kellen Church also, she had 3 service aces. Nothing shy right there to give her a little shout-out for that.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you there. And as you mentioned, Hansen, always so involved in the team's offense. And they also played another game, and we'll mention a little bit more about that later. But she's a setter, just for those that do not know who Courtney Hansen is. She's a setter, one of the best in the conference. And she, in that game this past Friday against Alaska Anchorage, she just started to turn into an offensive player, and not just a setter, but she started to I think she got a block at the net, which you don't see that from a setter very often, and I think she got a kill not off like a misdirection type play where, she does like a fake set and lands on their side, but she got like a spike at one point. So it was good to see her versatility. But yes, in the traditional setter sense, she is always assisting. 33 assists on the night. But what I'll also mention about Emily Adams and Fairchild, yes, they did lead the team in kills, 13 and 9 respectively. They both shot above 40%, which is very difficult to do in volleyball. That's to give you a little bit of perspective. That's like 40% in volleyball is like probably shooting almost 50% from the 3-point line in basketball. That's just an incredible number. So they also hosted this past weekend. As I mentioned, they did play Friday against Alaska Anchorage, but it was a part of the Ready Tiger Invitational, which took place Friday through Saturday. And Alaska Anchorage was not their first matchup. And a little bit more context with this invitational. Both Henderson State and Ouachita host different teams from around the country, essentially, with Alaska coming into town. But Ouachita's first game was against Lee, where they did win in 3 sets. And then later on Saturday, they had wins against Christian Brothers in 4 and Union University in 3. And as I mentioned, Alaska Anchorage, they did lose in 3 sets on Saturday evening. A phenomenal showing from the Seawolves. It was their first ever appearance in Arkansas, not just Arkadelphia, Arkansas, but in the natural state, and they really made their mark. And I wish I had the number what their success rate was or what their record was from this tournament, but they had beaten Union in 3 sets before that and then beat Ouachita in 3 sets. So they, at least for that first day, they were undefeated against teams in this tournament. But they also had a good day at the Clark County Fair, is what they had posted on their social media page. They just really made a good impression on me. I thought they came in. They didn't want to go. They had 3,988 miles was how far they traveled from Anchorage to Arkadelphia, and for just a couple of days, and they really made their mark. I was very impressed. They didn't want to leave without a win and without a dominant win. So just a great performance from them. But we'll talk about individually the Union game that Ouachita had, which was their last game that they played on Saturday. Zach, if you'll just go ahead and take us through some of the total team stats between both OBU and Union. And I'm looking at one stat with the hitting percentage that's pretty noticeable.
Yeah. So you may be kind of wondering what the difference in the game was. We were able to win 3-0, 3 sets to none. We had 39 kills to their 34. We had 32 assists. Union had 29. We had 43 digs. Union had 40. That's all pretty similar. It doesn't really indicate a blowout, but when you look at the shot percentage, we basically shot 32% to Union's 12%. So that's a 20% difference right there. That's like, if you're shooting 20% worse than the team that you're playing against, it's going to be hard to win ball games. So it was really good to see our defense kind of step up and make a difference when we were playing against Union. We were able to get 5 blocks, which that's a pretty solid number. Union was only able to get 1. So it was kind of clear our emphasis that we made on the game, being able to step up and contest them at the net and, really be able to save their shots against us, and it led to 3 sets to none. It was really good to see.
Yeah, 5 blocks for OBU to 1 block for Union is definitely not the number we typically see with Ouachita. They're not the biggest team in the Great American Conference, and they haven't been the biggest team in the games that they've played. But this was definitely a game that instilled some confidence, and really this tournament instilled some confidence as they went 3-1. And part of why they shot so well was their consistent playmakers. Kayla Steinmeier, the ever consistent and powerful senior, She had 8 kills. Leah Gardner, the freshman, she had 8 kills and 10 total points, and then she got a block in there as well. Haley Fairchild had 7 kills and also made her mark at the net with a block and a half. And Savannah Whitaker, who came in against Alaska Anchorage in that third set, and she never came out, considering, which was interesting because she didn't play at all in the previous 2 sets, and I don't think she played at all against Henderson State. And she came in, and I think she had like 3 straight kills. And then against Union, she had 6 kills. And then rounding it out with impressive numbers is Courtney Hansen with 28 assists, and that's just an incredible number considering only 3 sets were played. And of course, Ouachita's offense was just outstanding, but their defense was great, as Union only had 1 player with more than 6 points, and that was Sydney Whitaker with 6.5 points. And I don't think there's any relation to our Savannah Whitaker. But we're going to go ahead and transition to men and women's soccer. They hosted the University of Texas at Tyler, and it was the men's first home game of the season, where they didn't win, but they did have a tie against the Eagles. And Zach, when you look at that game, yes, the defense was obviously pretty good for Ouachita. They didn't allow a point from UT Tyler, but when you look, it still kind of looks like UT Tyler should have probably have won that game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Tyler, they were able to get 20 shots on goal compared to OBU's 7 shots on goal. So if you're just looking at able to shoot towards the goalie, they should have been able to get more than 1 goal, but we were able to hold them to 0, which is really good to see. I think part of that could be OBU really tends to play physical whenever we're playing against our opponents. Our guys team does, and we were able to kind of limit our fouls. We've been seeing like high numbers of fouls in our games. We've had a couple games, I believe, where we've had like 17 fouls, 19 fouls. This game, we only had 10 fouls. However, we did come out of the game with 3 yellow cards. May not be the best thing to see. It's good to play physical and kind of establish your type of play, but at the same time, you got to be able to kind of limit it. So hopefully going forward, we'll be able to limit the yellow cards, because it sets up University of Tennessee Tyler to score against us, but luckily we were able to hold them to 0 and come out of that game with a tie.
Yeah, and Texas Tyler definitely had a very aggressive offense, because obviously 20 shots, but they also forced Ouachita to have 7 saves compared to Tyler's only 2 saves. And the goalie for Ouachita, who's really been putting in a lot of work this year, is Messiah Nida, who has 27 saves over 6 games on the year. To me, one of the biggest things that Ouachita can improve upon, obviously they got to score. They have to score some points, because that's been a weakness, but it's something that they have the playmakers. I think it's just, I'm not sure what else, but they do have the playmakers and the players that can score, but they have to keep the pressure off of Nida, because yes, he's had 27 saves, but he's also allowed 15 goals on the year, and he's a good player. The stats aren't necessarily on his side, but when he's having to play against 20 different shots, I mean, that compared to Tyler's goalkeeper of only 7 shots, I think it's a both-way issue. Ouachita has to score some points. They have to be aggressive on offense, and methodical too, but they also have to be aggressive on defense. Not too aggressive, because 10 fouls on this game, 3 yellow cards, not particularly something you want to see. Now, women's soccer, they also played UT Tyler at home and beat them 2-1. When I look at those stats, it looks almost like UT Tyler should have won the game. When you look at the offensive stats, 17 shots attempted by UT Tyler, 10 by Ouachita. But Ouachita, they clearly had a second half resurgence. They had 7 shot attempts in the second half, and of course scoring 2 goals in the game. But what I look at specifically is the foul numbers between the two teams. We talked about that with the men's team, but the women's team has had some issues every once in a while with fouling, and it's pretty noticeable. 15 fouls for Ouachita compared to only 12 for UT Tyler. I don't know what needs to be done there, but I mean, don't you agree with me that yes, Ouachita did walk away with the win, but frankly, the Eagles should have probably gotten this win.
Oh yeah, it's always good to see. It's always good to be able to come out of scrappy games with wins, especially games that you can come out of with lots of things to learn from. Because 15 fouls, it's not really ideal. And like our first half, we started off really slow. We were only able to shoot 3 times at the goal. Or we were only able to shoot 3 times in general. I'm not even sure if those were all on goal. But obviously, second half, we were able to make some adjustments. We were able to outshoot them and able to score some goals. So we were able to come out with the win, and it's good to see that we kind of know what to key on for next week, and that way we'll be able to be better prepared and maybe not get such a slow start. That way we're not really digging out of a hill or out of a hole for our next opponent.
Yeah, definitely. A win is a win, but you can always learn from your wins and your losses. So we're going to transition to men's tennis. Women's tennis did not have anything going on this past weekend, but men's tennis, they did have the ITA regionals last Friday through Sunday in Topeka, Kansas. And the notable story from this regional was OBU's Fernando Doctors and Ramon Strassman. They swept through the regionals doubles, and they won the doubles championship qualifying for the ITA Cup in Rome, October 12th to 16th. And no, that is not Rome, Italy. That is Rome, Georgia. No jab at Rome, Georgia. It's a beautiful place, but it's not Rome, Italy. But anyway, phenomenal performance by Doctors and Strassman, and it's just great to see them heading into this cup and winning this doubles championship. It's great, it's great for the school, great for the program, and they weren't the only ones that had and actually going into some of their wins. Like I said, they swept everybody. They didn't sweep everybody, but they swept all the games they were in. So they had an 8-6 win over Newman, an 8-4 win over University of Arkansas Fort Smith, an 8-5 win over Washburn. And after those 3 wins, they faced 2 of their teammates, Phil Exner and Alex Blanchard, in the semifinals. And that's got to be sort of mixed emotions there, because Exner and Blanchard were both on a 3-game winning streak, and I know they're teammates, but at that and in that moment they were opponents, and it was. I wish I could have been there to watch that, but obviously Strassman and Doctors came out on top with an 8-5 win, and then in the finals they beat GAC opponent Harding's Casta Reuter and Theodore Zlatar 7-6 and 6-4. And just again, congratulations to Strassman and Doctors. Now, there were also some other performers that did pretty well this weekend outside of just Strassman and Doctors.
Yeah. Moritz Buss and Elias Lager, they also were able to catch some wins over Augustana, SWASU, Washburn, and SAU. Aaron Osmond and Joshua Lumburn Raja, they went 1-2, so they were still able to get some action in there. And it was really good to see as a whole. OBU as a team, I believe, went 14-9 in singles, so it's that's a good little difference right there. It's good to be able to see that we're able to catch a lot of wins.
Yeah, exactly. And to start the season, OBU men's and women's swim and dive had participated in the All Arkansas Invite on Saturday on the campus of Arkansas Little Rock, and they were very successful last year. A young program, a newer program, and they just built on that success again this past weekend. They had 5 Tigers winning in 7 different events. Jeff McCoy was sort of the MVP, if you want to make him one, from this past event. He won the men's 200 individual medley. And those that are not familiar with swimming, this event is where you use all 4 competitive strokes, which is the butterfly, the backstroke, the breaststroke, and then the freestyle. And you have to do it all in that order. And he did so and won that competition 1 minute 59 seconds. So phenomenal job. And he wasn't done yet. He had the 100 backstroke, and he won with a time of 54 seconds. Yes, 54 seconds and I guess 18 milliseconds. But also in women's, the women's group, Anna Phelps, who is a newcomer this season, she won the women's 500 freestyle with a time of 5 minutes and 16 seconds. And back to men's, Tyler Andrus won the men's 500 freestyle with a time of 4:45:03. Now, Zach, of course, swim and dive, they compete at the same events. The dive team was even newer than the swim team. They have a new coach, Julia Day, we talked about last week. They did pretty well this weekend as well.
Yeah, we had some really good positives coming out of our dive team. Gavin Richardson, he was able to win the 3-meter dive with a score of 257.95. And we also had another winner, Carson Powers, won the 1-meter dive with a score of 271.50. So it was really good to see. It was really good to see Carson and Gavin able to win their events and be able to kind of lead our other teammates on our dive team, because we had plenty of other Tigers. They found themselves finishing in top 3, top 2 in a lot of the other events. So it's good to kind of see our new coach come in and establish a new kind of, she's establishing her culture of winning. She knows what she's doing. She's kind of leading our divers. So we got a lot of really good positives to see out of that.
Yeah, there were a lot of Tiger Sharks that did end up in the top 3 in a lot of events, but there were so many names. If you want to go check that out, go check it out on obutigers.com and just look up swimming in the sports section, and you will see the recap of the All Arkansas Invite, and you'll be able to see who all finished where. Now, men's and women's cross country performed well this past weekend in the Music City in Nashville, Tennessee at the Trevecca Nazarene Invitational. The men took 2nd of 8 teams and the women took 3rd of 8 teams. The men finished over 5 Division I programs, including Lipscomb, Jacksonville, and Austin Peay, but they did finish behind in-state, I guess you would call them a rival, but in-state competitor, the University of Central Arkansas. The women finished over several Division I schools as well, but they also finished above their host, Trevecca Nazarene, and they did finish behind UCA and Lipscomb. So for the men, the top runner in the 8K was freshman Noah Embry, who was 10th with a time of 25 minutes and 39 seconds. And also in the top 25, Dylan Drew finished 14th, Whit Lawrence 17th, Cade Swindle 18th, which is actually only behind Lawrence by 0.2 seconds. So I know that was a competitive finish for 2 Tiger teammates. Lawson Sanders finished 19th, Gabriel Greenwich 21st, Elias Found and Jalen Becho had the same time, but Found came in at 24th and Becho at 25. And for the women, the top runner of the 5K was Macy Cash, one of the top runners from a year ago. She took 10th place with a time of 18:31.4. Also in the top 25 were Elise Knight, came in at 17th, JC McGregor 21st, Taylor Keith, a top runner from a year ago, in 22nd, Megan Monk 23rd, and Lucy Holden 24th. Now we're going to reverse it back to soccer, because there was soccer this past weekend, and the men hosted Dallas Baptist, but unfortunately lost 0-2. 24-3. There wasn't, again, sort of some pretty glaring issues, Zach, when you look at the team comparison or the team stat comparisons.
Yeah, as Chris kind of mentioned earlier, for our guys' soccer, our offense is really kind of what needs to take the next step before we can start, winning more games. Dallas Baptist, they were able to shoot. They were able to get 28 shots compared to OBU's 6. So as far as just kind of looking at the ratio to that, it's going to be hard to win a game if we're that far behind, if there's that big of a margin. But once again, Dallas Baptist shoots 28 times, but we're still able to come out with 7 saves. That's a good number. We finish most games with better defensive stats than the other team, but it kind of comes at a negative because that also just kind of means we're playing more defense than the other team. So we really want to see us kind of transition into a more aggressive approach on offense. And OBU, coming out of that game, Dallas Baptist only had 5 fouls, so they really played a clean game. OBU had 21. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's our season highest. I think it'll be hard for us to win a game if we have 21 fouls compared to Dallas Baptist 5. It's not really setting us up in the way to score as we'd really like, and it's kind of putting a lot of stress on our goalie. So we're going to really have to make sure we clean up on that moving into next week. But I think we'll be able to. There's still plenty of season left, so I think it's definitely too early to kind of overreact and say, our season's lost, because we've got plenty of time to step it up. And our offense, I believe our offense will be able to kind of pick things up.
Yeah, definitely need to take the pressure off of Nida. He did have 7 saves out of 28 total shots by Dallas Baptist. 10 of them were shots on goal. But I imagine at some point they will find sort of a balance of improving on offense, having better efficiency, and being more effective and cleaner on the defensive side. So OBU women's soccer also had a game this past week, and it did end in a tie against a very good Texas women's team that were undefeated up to this point. I guess both teams technically don't have a loss, but now both teams have a tie to add to their record. But I look at that game. Texas women's, again, should have probably have won that game, but the goalkeeping and the defense for OBU was excellent. It was just the offense wasn't quite there. Only 5 shots by OBU compared to 17 for Texas women's. But Texas women's, definitely a phenomenal team, 5 wins on the year. So OBU, they definitely held their ground, a team that is an excellent offensive team, and they didn't force them to any points, which, of course, they didn't score any as well. But, they can definitely take that away as a positive. And the foul comparison is pretty glaring, 7-3, but 7 fouls for OBU is not many compared to what we've seen the last few games. So that's another positive to take away. And the final sport that played this past weekend was OBU football, who took on Southern Arkansas University at home. Zach, you want to tell us a little bit about what we got to see Saturday?
Oh, yeah. Huge game. It was a really good win for OBU. The difference in the game, looking at it 52-24, it looks like a big win for OBU, but the difference in the game was the fourth quarter. SAU was able to keep it within either 1 or 2 scores the whole entire game until the fourth quarter started, and then we outscored them in the fourth 17-0. So it's really good to see against top opponents in the conference. We're going to have to be able to play a game for 4 quarters. We're going to have to be able to put together a full game. And so it was good to see that we were able to kind of outlast SAU and play the full 4 quarters and able to come out with a really big win. OBU to SAU, as far as yards and penalties, there wasn't that big of a difference. We had 437 yards. SAU had 424. We actually had more penalties than SAU. We had 11. SAU had 7, but it was good to see us kind of be able to cancel that out. Rushing yards, we had 194. SAU had 156. So on offense, it was kind of the stat comparisons were pretty similar, but our score doesn't reflect that because we were able to convert in the red zone more. We had 6 trips to the red zone, scored all 6 times. SAU also scored every time they were in the red zone, but they only scored 4 times. So that was really good to see. I thought Riley Harms, he really kind of stood out because he only completed 12 passes, but he had 243 yards off of them and 4 touchdowns. So it was good to see he's able to really turn a lot of our plays into big chunk plays, which gives us a lot of momentum and kind of sets us up to score a lot of points. And he also only took 2 sacks, so it was really good to see that he didn't really have a lot of trouble moving the ball downfield for us.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that 243 passing yards came from a 73-yard catch and touchdown for Carter McElhaney. And something significant about McElhaney, he's a freshman, and only 3 games into his collegiate career, he was just named GAC Special Teams Player of the Week. He averaged 32 yards per kick return, including a 73-yard return, which set up OBU's first offensive drive of the game. And that's another thing that, yes, the yards for both teams were pretty similar, but why they were similar and the score was not was OBU had better position when it came to their scoring. They were in SAU territory more often, and it was because of plays like what McElhaney was able to do. But another thing was Kendall Givens was just utterly dominant on the ground. And actually, not just the ground, but in general. He had a receiving touchdown and 3 rushing touchdowns. We saw just how good he was last game against the Rangers at home, having 3 scores as well on just 4 carries, and he has another 3 scores. He did have just under a 4-yard per carry average, but he did have some help from another strong back in Chris Henley Jr., who showed out and had over 100 yards in just his second collegiate game last week, and he had on just 5 carries 63 yards. And then quarterback Riley Harms also had 28 yards on the ground as well. In the air, as I mentioned, McElhaney and Givens both had receiving touchdowns, but Connor Flanagan was definitely our biggest difference maker. He had 5 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. And then starting tight end Jackson Garrison had his first score maybe of his career, along with 2 catches for 35 yards. And Zach, obviously 24 points scored for SAU. They only scored 3 points in the second half, and that was in the third quarter. So a lot of what went into that game was, into the second half, was, okay, OBU was on a roll on offense, but their defense was on even more of a roll. But there's pretty clear, right away, 3 guys for Ouachita with double-digit tackles. So pretty glaring who some of the standouts were.
Oh, yeah. Josiah Johnson, he led us in tackles. He had 14 tackles. That's a really high total. It was really good to see him kind of lead our defense. Jax Miller right behind him with 13. He also had 2.5 tackles for loss, big plays, and he had a pass defense. Another guy, he didn't lead us in tackles, but he had 11. Bruin Barnes, it was really good to see that because he kind of had, I'd call it a breakout game for him last week. He showed out. He made a lot of big plays for us. You can see him. He always plays kind of on the edge around the linebacker area, and he also had a pass defense to go along with his 11 tackles. Mario Ganter, he's our weak side corner. He had 7 tackles. That's a really good number. And one guy we can always count on to make big plays for us is Mikey Gonzalez. They call him Big Mike. He had 6 tackles, but 3.5 tackles for loss, including 2 sacks. So he kind of asserted his dominance, especially later on in the second half. We had lots of other guys make passes defense, get tackles for us, fly around the field. It was really good to see our defense make adjustments in the second half and limit them to a field goal. But I'm also going to say this. I'm going to go back to our passing game. Carter McElhaney, he had that 1 catch for a 73-yard touchdown. that was probably the best ball I've ever seen Riley throw. Because, he put it on the money. I know it was a 73-yard touchdown, but it was in the air for at least 60 yards. And Carter McElhaney, he never had to slow down. And it was funny because you could see if you go back and watch the play, Riley, as soon as he threw it and he saw Carter running full speed, he just started walking off the field because he knew he put it on the money before he had even caught it and ran for the touchdown. So that was definitely a big play, kind of towards the end of the half, and really kind of helped propel us to start the blowout of the game.
Well, a lot of confidence in the freshman, and I just got word from Chase Hartzell with Ouachita Sports Digital Network. I mentioned Kendall Givens had 3 touchdowns as well as 3 touchdowns a week ago, and you might be wondering, and for those that know who Kendall Givens is, this is his 3rd year with the program, has double-digit touchdowns. I guess he hasn't hit that mark yet this year, but has had double-digit touchdowns every season. You might be wondering, where is he on the all-time leaderboard for rushing touchdowns for Ouachita? I just got word. Number 3 all-time with 43 rushing touchdowns. Phenomenal performance for that guy. And he's also a member of Ouachita Sports Digital Network, a valued member there. But yes, Brune Barnes, going back to the defense, he had a phenomenal game against the Rangers. He broke out, and I had said that he was going to get more time, and he did, along with some other guys that had pretty good games in the previous game against the Rangers. Chris Haywood, defensive end, he had half a tackle for loss, as well as Braylon Johnson, who had a fumble recovery, and just guys that have been backups for their careers but have gotten some early opportunities this year. So we'll look at the team records as of September 18th. Ouachita football is 3-0. Ouachita volleyball is 5-8, 0-1 in conference. Women's soccer has 3 wins, 0 losses, and 3 ties. And men's soccer is currently still looking for the first win on the year. So we'll go ahead and start our Tiger Prowl preview with Ouachita volleyball. Will be playing Tuesday against Arkansas Monticello, who is searching for their first win of the season. Again, second conference game of the season. It will be this Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Now, by the time that this was released, that game would have already happened. So catch that this Tuesday, 6 p.m. on the Ouachita Sports Digital Network. Catch the recap of that game in next week's episode. Now, this Wednesday, again, this might already happen by the time that this podcast episode is released, but women's soccer will be playing Harding. Will be hosting Harding, who is 2-3-1 on the season, Wednesday at 4 p.m. OBU men's soccer will also be playing against Harding, who is also 2-3-1, and that will be on Thursday at 4 p.m. So check out Ouachita Sports Digital Network for coverage of that match. OBU volleyball will also be playing Harding. It is week of the Bisons for the Tigers. Harding is 6-7 and 1-0 in conference play as of Monday, and they are on a 4-game losing streak, and they're going to be playing Ouachita at their own house this Thursday at 6 p.m. Women's tennis had the week off this past week, but they will be playing in the ITA Regionals this Friday and Sunday in Edmond, Oklahoma. Men's tennis does not play this week. Now, Zach, football goes on just their second road game of the season, and they are going down to Monticello, who is 2-1 on the season. Zach, tell us about that game.
Yeah, UAM, they've looked really solid so far. This will be their second home game. They've only played one home game so far. So they are anticipating a good crowd turnout. You know, OBU is a highly decorated team, so they're going to bring their A game against us, and we're going to have to make sure we're able to battle against them. So far, UAM, weeks 1 and 2, they beat the same opponents that OBU beat weeks 1 and 2. They were able to blow out Northwestern and Southwestern Oklahoma. They beat Northwestern 49-24, and then the next week they beat Southwestern even worse, 58-21. However, last week they're coming off of a loss against Harding, 59-19. So it's good for OBU. We're able to kind of catch them whenever they're down. But at the same time, if I'm UAM, I'm really not overreacting to the bad loss because Harding, they're always a top competitor. They're always a tough team to beat. And even with the loss, they're still sitting at 2-1. OBU obviously 3-0, but both teams having good records so far. This is definitely a pivotal game for UAM because if they're able to come out with a win, they're looking at 3-1. They're still looking at on the top of the rankings, looking to win the division. However, if they lose, they'll fall to 2-2. They definitely don't want to spend the rest of their season trailing against teams like OBU and Harding, especially after losing to them early on. And so the key for OBU to focus on for this game is going to be UAM's quarterback, and they've also got two really good receivers. Their quarterback, Dylan Brown, he's kind of been their bright spot. He's thrown for 799 yards, and he has 10 touchdowns to go with just 3 interceptions. So he's shown through 3 games he's averaging a turnover a game, but that's really not that bad, and he's got 10 touchdowns, so he's able to put some points on the board for them as they showed in their blowouts week 1 and 2. There are 2 receivers UAM has, Isaiah Cross and Nick Howard. They both have over 200 yards apiece on the season. Cross has 15 catches, Howard has 14, and they have combined for 7 touchdowns in their first 3 games. They've really shown they're able to make some plays and put points on the board. So OBU is going to have to be able to limit this. Our defense is going to have to play how they played in the second half against SAU and really kind of play physical against them, which, lucky for us, I think we'll be able to match up against them really well because we've got Steven and Mario, they're lockdown corners, and we've got safeties that have, we've got Josiah Johnson, he's already been named GAC Player of the Week this season. We've also got, we've got other guys back there. So I really think our defense is going to be able to limit them, and our offense is going to do what our offense always does and put up a lot of points.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree. DeMillan Brown is continuously a big issue for any team that plays against the Boll Weevils. And he's always been one of the best players in the conference, and he continues to look like that so far in just 3 games. Now, that's going to do it for our Tiger Prowl preview, but we will go ahead and mention something. Both women's and men's basketball over the past week released their 2023-24 schedules. So, of course, the conference schedules are pretty, they play both every conference opponent once at their house and once at home. So, but I'll go ahead and highlight some of the non-conference games for OBU women's basketball right away. Coach Dallamore's group's going to be will be hosting Mississippi College and Pittsburgh State at home, and will be traveling to Tyler to take on UT Tyler. And something of interest to note with UT Tyler and Pitt State, they both made the NCAA tournament last year, and UT Tyler made it all the way to the Elite 8. It was actually number 14 in the country at the time. So Coach Dallamore definitely knows his group can handle a challenge, and we're going to see if they can against 2 premier opponents early next season. For the men, their season starts off with the GAC MIAA challenge, where they start out with Central Missouri, and then they eventually will play Lincoln University, all at a neutral site in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So they'll also have a home non-conference matchup against Ecclesia College, as well as games against John Melvin University and Dallas Christian, and then they will travel to Cleveland, Mississippi to play Delta State during the season. So I'll go ahead and mention as our last segment of the day, just making sure it is our last segment, it's our GAC Overachievers segment. So not a lot of new news from guys that have played in the GAC that are currently playing in the NFL. That's really the only thing I've been able to notice. But Gregory Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars, former Ouachita Tiger, landed on injured reserve just a few days ago. Still on the active roster, just on injured reserve. But I imagine once he does get off that 4-week injured reserve list, he will come back and have a big role in that Jaguars secondary. And this guy hasn't gone pro, but he did make the move from Division II Ouachita up to Division I Missouri. It is Trey Flint, the former long snapper for the Tigers, is playing for another Tiger team in the Missouri Tigers. And why I'm mentioning him, he's the starting long snapper, but he's made probably one of the best plays in his collegiate career, where he had the snap which led to the 61-yard field goal that won the game against number 15 Kansas State. And that was one of the premier upsets of the weekend. Actually, I would say it was the premier upset of the weekend, unranked Missouri knocking off number 15 Kansas State. And not many people talk about the long snapper making the snap. It's usually, the attention's on the kicker, and well-deserved for 61 yards of a field goal. But the snap, I watched that play a couple times. It was perfect. Wish he was still here, but regardless, congratulations, Trey. And hope you have a phenomenal SEC season with the Missouri Tigers. Well, that's going to do it for us, and thank you for tuning in to the 4th episode of the Roar Rundown Sports Podcast. Tune in next week for episode number 5 and what looks like, and we'll talk about everything that we mentioned in the Tiger Prow preview. But tune in next week, and thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And go Tigers.